Welcome to everyone. Today our guest is LFA fighter Victor Altamirano. Victor, thank you so much for accepting the interview. So what can you say about yourself, in few words to announce for the fans?
If I would say about myself, I'm very passionate about what I do. I would say that I really put a lot of emphasis on my fighting with the end goal of being also a proficient teacher, proficient professor. I really make sure that if I'm able to understand something, I also want to make sure that I'm able to help someone else understand it as well to a very high level, not just at its basics.
When did you start training MMA?
I started training MMA almost 10 years ago, about when I was 21, and I'm about to turn 30. So that's exciting. And I started with a Taekwondo background, which I had a second degree black belt in it. And then I made the transition into MMA to Peak Performance Watauga, one of the best schools here in Dallas-Fort Worth, and taught by Coach Juan Tatum. He's the lead instructor here. So he took me under his wing, and ever since then, we've been a steady progress with my Muay Thai transitioning from Taekwondo style into a more all-rounded striking style that's also effective for grappling. And these are world-class jiu-jitsu players here we have at Peak Performance. So it was very easy for me to begin to understand what is it that's most important when it comes to integrating the Taekwondo striking into a more practical, all-around MMA format.
Did you have a hard time switching between leading foot and the rear foot? Because in Taekwondo, the most of the weight is on the rear foot. It's not on the leading foot. Did you have a hard time with that?
I did it first, especially with Muay Thai when I would eat leg kicks every single day. It just made those leg kicks easy for my opponents. And that's when I realized, okay, well, I need to either learn better footwork or just clenched up. And that's when I started to open up, like, okay, I need to work on this. I need to work on this. Just trying new things and getting punished for it was how I began to make the transition. So was it difficult? No, but it was painful. It was a painful transition. I don't know about difficult, but very painful.
Yeah, but in Muay Thai, for example, this is the stance. In Taekwondo is like this. It's very much, it's hard to find a mid guard between those two. So your guard, I don't know. Your guard is kind of all-rounder from what I could have seen, but I'm not sure. What do you think about this?
As far as my stance goes, I think it's well-rounded when it comes to my personal way of fighting. I think when it comes to when you reach a certain level of proficiency in anything really, but let's just say martial arts for the sake of, that's what we're doing here. Many different fighters have their own stance. I mean, look at Wonder Boy. You see Wonder Boy has a very Taekwondo stance, and it's very narrow, it's very bladed. So he's able to blitz, but what he's not able to do very well is fight in the pocket. So he keeps you at distance, he'll fight you in the pocket to create that distance. And that is the stance that works for him because his best assets, his best power shots are from controlling the distance with that stance. Then you have grapplers like Khabib. His stance is not narrow and his stance is it's not bladed like Wonder Boy's, but that's because his best assets are from being close and squared up to you in order to grapple. So everybody develops their own stances as they realize, okay, what's my strong suit? Where is it that I become the best at? And where is it that I need to work on? And where are my vulnerabilities? And from those positions, people will begin to develop their personal stance. If you look at a lot of professional fighters, and you wouldn't know that they're professional fighters. If you didn't know they were professional fighters, and you looked at their stances, you may find mistakes like, oh, this guy keeps their hand down. This guy doesn't shuffle his head movement a certain way. But at the end of the day, they are effective, not because they're doing a technique a certain way, but because they're doing a technique a certain way that works for them. So as far as my stance goes, I would say that it's very it's very striking oriented with the end of being a kicking stance. I think my stance is very suited for making sure that my kicks are always being able to be delivered with power, but I switch back and forth.
Do you have a nickname? Did you get one?
Oh, El Magnifico. That was given by my coach, my team. They say, and these are not my words, they said that people, when they see me fight, is just magnificent. I don't know. I don't know if that's true from my point of view. I mean, I'm in the cage, I'm just doing my thing. But people say that it's like they're hearing a symphony being played out and displayed. I really don't know if that's the striking, the grappling. I'm not sure what aspect specifically is it that gives someone such impression. But when it comes to me personally, I just enjoy myself there. And maybe they're just watching my enjoyment.
Yeah, probably. I mean, nickname is something that fans give to you. For example, my nickname is kind of from the USA fan. I couldn't explain him that I'm having a hat for the beach. He was saying it's a cowboy hat, and but he said to the other, and then to the other, and then everybody thinks I'm wearing a cowboy hat, which is not. But okay, it's something fans give it to you, I guess.
So you were the cowboy? Was that your nickname, the cowboy?
Yes, my nickname is actually the Bulgarian cowboy because I'm from Bulgaria. But you can't explain. You can't explain people. I told him, listen, mate, this is a hat for the beach. Okay, this is Bulgarian hat for the beach, and he's like, no, it's a cowboy hat. It's a cowboy hat.
So you wore it once and stuck with you. Now I guess I gotta wear it every day now.
I got used to it. But did you get used to El Magnifico?
Well, like you said, I think fans, the people around you pick your nickname. And I like it. I like it because it comes from a place where the people who put the hard work with me gave me that nickname. I didn't choose it, but the people who are every day with me, just grinding it out, they're like, this is how we feel about you, and I like it. I like that we're able to reciprocate the passion for the sport we each have, and that's demonstrated in many ways. And one of those ways is the way they see me and the way they like to the way they want to make me even better. How better? Well, magnifico better, and that's what I strive for as well. So yeah, it's good. I like it.
Who are your sparring partners and coaches right now?
My sparring partners are Skylar, David, Destiny, Oldenkamp. Destiny Oldenkamp actually has a fight coming up on January 22nd for XKO. So we're really looking forward to that. We've been working really hard on it. We also have Tony Lemons, which is our best wrestling coach that we got. He's really good. I think he's still injured. He's out. He broke some toes. And then we have Michael Malone, and we have Brandon. We just have an entire team of just people who come up, show up, and just give you a big slice of humble pie every day you come. And it's very difficult for me to slack off. Sometimes you show up to the gym, and you're like, man, I feel a little tired. I'm gonna give it all I got. And sometimes you're like, oh man, let me step it back. Let me take a breather. These people don't let you do that. These people are like, hey, well, I'm not going to take a breather, so you got to step up. You got to step up. So my training partners are very dedicated. When COVID hit, we were still on it. We sticked on top of it. Destiny Oldenkamp being one of the ones, Destiny and David, where I would meet with them at their house. And we just make sure that we were on top of our game the whole time. Pad holding, lifting, running. The gyms were closed, but our passion wasn't. So we just kept going. I'm really grateful that I have that team that allows me to hold each other accountable for the greatness that we set as a goal.
Excellent story. So you trained during pandemics. This kind of probably explains your results. But let's get back into your early days. What can you say about your first amateur fight?
My first amateur fight was with John Camaro. It was here in Dallas, Texas, with Extreme Knockout by Steve Armstrong, who was a promoter. And it was against 135. It was a 135. That was before I made the transition to 125. And he was already a seasoned fighter. And people said that, you know, they fed me to him. I don't know if they were expecting me to lose or what have you. But at that point, I had no clue what being fed was. I had no clue what being given a fight was, what it entailed, you know. I had no clue what that I had to make weight. Like, I didn't even know what making weight was. I didn't wrestle in college. So I didn't know I had to be on a diet. I didn't know I had to, you know, cut weight. I just agreed to a fight, and then they tell me, hey, these are the things you got to do. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing them. And it wasn't difficult. It was just very different. And because it was at 135, it wasn't necessarily excruciating. It was maybe a couple pounds for me. I was weighing 140, so it was 5 pounds, nothing. And as far as the weight cut itself and not eating and drinking, that was probably the most difficult part, but I was able to do it without without passing out, you know, for being my first one. And it was in a ring. It took place in a ring. We didn't have a cage. And because I didn't know, you know, I was like, okay, what are we about to do? You're allowed to do everything? Okay, cool. So I just went out, guns blazing. I threw a back leg ground kick on southpaw, so it landed on the inside of John Camaro's thigh. And that just went, pow, and then straight punches. So land the kick, straight, and I dropped him. I don't know if I dropped him because I kept going straight really fast or because I actually hurt him, but I just kept that pace. He's a great grappler, so he was able to take me down because I was very linear. I was really aggressive going forward. So he was able to take me down most of the fights. I mean, most of the rounds. And then when the round would end, we would get back up. And I just made sure that there was a lot of trading, a lot of substantial striking when I was on my feet, and I won by decision. So it was pretty cool. You know, I guess that was when I got the taste of freedom. Like, oh man, I get to hit people, I get to kick people, I get to hold them, and you know, it's okay. It's okay. Competing Taekwondo, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you're point sparring. You're not really allowed to.
I was vice champ of my state. I know pretty much a lot about Taekwondo.
Yeah. So it's hard to hold back. You know, sometimes you get the cue for certain things and like, oh.
Yeah, but Taekwondo is very tricky when you get inside the pocket, but outside the pocket, it's very good.
Yes.
Yes, pretty much. And about your professional debut, it was a different story, or I mean, different story mentally, or?
Mentally, I've actually had come out from an amateur loss. So I went to my professional debut after an amateur loss, which what made that transition happen was the fact that I was beginning to evolve my game. And one of the few things that held it back were the rules. As an amateur, I wasn't allowed to throw elbows. I wasn't allowed to throw reinforced knees to the face. And I would find myself in places where that was a great option, but I would lose position because I wasn't able to go ahead and proceed with such strikes. And that's when I say, okay, well, my last fight, I almost won. I lost. I feel like if I would have been able to elbow and take a knees like all the way out, I would have been able to have a better chance and really outstrike my opponent. So we made sure we made that decision. Be like, all right, we're going pro, and now we can throw the things that were inhibiting us from winning these fights. And when that next fight came, I was ready. I knew this guy was a striker, Jesus Martinez, and he wanted to trade. And that was a really long night, actually. I was on the prelims, and I was supposed to fight, I think, before the main card. And then because of the time schedule and they have to be on air by a certain time, they bumped me into after the show. So the prelims happened, Then the main card happened, and then it ended as far as the cameras go. The broadcast ended, and then they had me. So everybody stayed, and we did. That was the fight. It was around almost midnight when I fought. I was hungry and I was ready to go.
Probably very, very hard, I guess. And your second fight, you finished via submission, right?
Correct. Yes, my first two were submissions. The first one was a heel hook, and the second one against Christopher Salinas was a armbar from the top. They were both in the first round, and they both came from a takedown. I engaged Jesus Martinez immediately into the clinch, which was my first fight, and then I went knee to the cage, grabbed a single leg, took him down, maintained that leg, and then I set up the heel hook. For my second fight, Salinas was a really great boxer, so I was having difficulty making sure my ankles were sharper than his, and I decided that the best option for Christopher Salinas was to make sure that I took him down, and which is what I did. Passed the guard, mounted him, strike. As soon as he started defending, I caught the arm, and the armbar was set right at the last second of the first.
I know that you had another, I think, was it Darce choke win? Was it in the fight number 3 or 4?
Which one?
Darce choke win. You have...
that was with Robert.
Yes.
Robert. I believe that was my third fight. And it was my third or my fourth, and it was my darts choke. Yes, so that was with a few strikes. You know, we went to the floor. I noticed he had pretty good jiu-jitsu, but not from a good scramble. And whenever I was in half guard, I realized that he wasn't trying to create an angle to escape. He was trying to come into me to scoop my legs from underneath me and begin to create a sweep from there. So from there, I just make sure that his head couldn't connect to his knees or my knees. And as his top arm was covering, I synced in the hand for a Darce choke. And that's how it went.
When it comes to sweep, that is one technical question. When it comes to sweep, for example, when you're in the half guard, according to your thoughts, which is the best way from the half guard to prevent an opponent who has very good sweeps to get on the top of you?
I would say to square him back up. Most sweeps, or if not all of the sweeps, have to begin with your opponent being able to lay on one side of the hip. If they're not able to be on one side of the hip, then they don't have enough leverage to begin a rocking motion or continuing a rotation of the shoulders. So if both shoulders are on the mat or both hips are on the mat, then it's a lot more difficult to get swept. So if I need to prevent a sweep from on top, I need to make sure I square up the hips, put both hips and or shoulders back on the mat, just by shuffling from one side to the other. So if I have the half guard and I am in their right half guard, I would just shuffle to my right to make sure that they go from being sideways to being squared. That's not going to stop a sweep attempt, but at the very least, I know for a fact that the next thing that they have to do to make their position better is to get back to the side. And just keep resetting them like that allows you to keep resetting yourself to be a step ahead. Just going back to square, back to square.
So it means technically that your anticipation skills have to rock, right?
Yes, very, very much so. And, you know, you can also get caught back in full guard by doing that. So it's just a constant resetting. Like, am I going in? Am I going out? Am I shuffling while I'm entering? Am I shuffling while I'm exiting? You know, when do I pass? Just the constant little nuances that you just have to be aware that vary within opponents. So it's really hard to just say this is the way to do it.
How did you finish Marquis Smith?
Marquis Smith was with a liver shot. So I knew that he had watched my footage, and it seemed like I was a ground player. I'm a jiu-jitsu player. And that's mostly because my chances to strike were just happened to be not as beneficial as to getting my submissions, you know? So Marquise was planning on striking me, and I'm like, all right, cool. Let's work on my striking. I am a striker. Let's do it like this. And that camp, I remember I was specifically working on my head movement, you know? In order to continue a fluidity with my grappling and my striking, I had to make sure that I was not caught in one place. And to do that, I needed to move in smart ways. So my head movement was constantly. So as Marquise began a very aggressive attack, I made sure that my footwork was good and on point. I was always on the outside, and I was constantly making sure that his cross, which was his right cross, was not available. So I kept circling and circling away from his cross, so to his left, to make sure that he couldn't throw the cross, because he would constantly be chasing me. So this hand couldn't be thrown because he was constantly trying to chase me. So I knew that the cross is what he was hunting. So as I was starting to approach the cage, the back to my cage, I took an angle towards the power hand, towards the cross, knowing that he was going to throw it. And when he did throw it, I used my footwork, I got underneath it, and I threw a left uppercut across the liver. And I wasn't really sure if that dropped him when it happened. I just know he winced a little bit and he pocketed up, which is, you know, you can do that and still not be out. That could have been him getting ready for a takedown. But I just continued to create my angle as I was exiting and proceeded with more strikes. You know, I didn't really know that I had dropped him until after my fourth strike after I landed it.
So liver shot, I actually saw that strike, and to me it looked kind of remembered me on the fight between Aldo and Stevens, if you know what I'm talking about.
No, I haven't seen it.
No, when Aldo was like, and he did this and bombed to the liver, and Stevens was rocked, then he attacked four times. I remember that fight very well.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Liver shots are hard because you're conscious the whole time.
But that fight and this weekend, I was doing live commentary for Cage Warriors, and again Morgan Charrier and Perry Goodwin. It was the same situation. Charrier was 1-2, then he attacked to the liver, and Goodwin immediately fell. But immediately, as soon as he touched, he fell immediately.
Dang.
Yeah, it was a stoppage. So liver shots are very, very hard. So considering your only loss happened outside of LFA, what do you think of LFA as a promotion?
Oh, I love the LFA. The LFA is a great promotion when it comes to their professionalism, just putting on the show, really. You know, they make sure their schedule's on time. They make sure their fighters are taken care of when it comes to making weight. You know, they're courteous to their fighters. The arenas they pick are always well run. I've never had a bad experience with the LFA. And I feel like the fighters that they pick, they choose, are of high caliber. You know, they make sure that they don't just put on fights. You know, they don't just put on fights. And you can see that it reflects on what you see. You know, constantly LFA fighters are being sent to the UFC. You know, and, you know, Dana White has certain standards that he wants to see with fighters, and he wouldn't be taking them if the LFA didn't make sure that they brought him in for the world to be seen, you know. So I think the LFA does a great job.
Absolutely. And about the only loss of your career, I mean, you lost to a very good opponent. I mean, Jared Brooks is a very, very hard opponent. So I watched some of his fights, and what was the greatest problem when you fought him?
The greatest problem with Jared Brooks, that was the first time I fought someone at that level. You know, I didn't know the intensity that you bring whenever you are fighting at the very, very high level. And he did. He fought at the UFCs, and he's a great decorated wrestler. So me coming in, I think what it was, I think I let victory defeated me. You know, my other fights, I was able to set the pace. I was able to, you know, make sure I'm moving my opponent. I was able to read them. And when Jared came out, guns blazing, pa, 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 wrestling, take me down. You know, I wasn't ready to match that intensity. You know, that intensity exists within me, and it's brought up here at the gym all the time. But it was the first time that I saw it in the cage, and it was just me forgetting that it was going to happen that way. You know, he brought a lot of intensity, and we didn't we did. I didn't anticipate it. I didn't anticipate it to be that way, for him to be so aggressive. He just has great wrestling. He was able to shut me down when it came to my striking. You know, he did not want to strike. He made that very evident that his path to victory was going to be to take me to the ground. We had been working on my jiu-jitsu. I was going through, I've always struggled a little bit in believing how good my jiu-jitsu is, which is something that we have always been working on. We have a great jiu-jitsu team, and it's probably because we have such an amazing jiu-jitsu team that I have a hard time sometimes feeling like I'm making progress. You know, like I said before, I come here, train jiu-jitsu, and everyone's just throttling me. They're just submitting me. They're taking me down. I have a hard time doing this. And so sometimes in my head, I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I'm a good grappler. I don't know if I'm a good grappler because I'm in a room full of killers, amazing grapplers the whole time. And when it came to Jared Brooks, him being another great grappler, and he taking me down, I'm like, oh, man, I'm just going to try my best to get out like I do at the gym. And we've identified those problems since. We've identified the things that I need to work on. And we've been very successful because of the team that we have. I think that loss came from the lack of my understanding of the intensity and inspiration that you have to bring when you step into the cage. You know, you can't just step into the cage. Mentally, you can't just step into the cage, even if you earned the reason why you are there.
What can you say about your last LFA fight? Are you pleased with the performance? I mean, no offense, but to me it was a very, very hard fight. I mean, for both fighters, it looked to me like a very, very hard fight. I think it was kind of... Some people would probably say, you know, big difference between the fighters, but to me, it was like very hard fight for both sides.
Yeah, it was a very intense fight for both of us. He was very busy on the aggressive side when it came to the grappling. But like I mentioned before, we focused a lot on the ground game. We focused a lot on the ground game and making sure that remained offensive. We made sure that remained offensive. In the past, my ground game has been very defensive to the point that I didn't do much. You know, I would just stay in guard. And for leading up to this fight, we were working on how to make sure that when we're on the ground, we don't just hold guard. We are constantly moving. We are constantly at bay. We're either trying to get up or we're trying to sweep or submit. And he was a very aggressive wrestler. He was great. He was on top of it. And I did know one thing. I knew that he was not going to strike with me. I knew that he wasn't going to trade with me. So I knew that my gear had to be shifted towards jiu-jitsu. I knew that my path to victory was going to be to have better movement in jiu-jitsu because he was not going to allow me to stand. He was simply not. And if I was going to be effective standing, I was going to continue a forward pressure, which means easy takedowns once you push forward. So I would say it was a very difficult fight when it came to understanding that. But once I was in it, I felt pretty safe. And not at one point in that fight did I feel like I was going to get hurt. I was never really endangered. I never really felt endangered. I felt a little frustrated about getting taken down. But immediately afterwards, I was like, well, we're moving. I'm not in danger. I just need to make sure that he doesn't get comfortable. And he was definitely not comfortable on the feet. So once he began to become uncomfortable on the ground, we achieved the goal of the triangle.
You did a great job with this win. What are your plans for the future? Do you have something locked in? Or you're currently, you know, still waiting for the next offer, still waiting for the next fight? Or
Yeah, so we're still on top of it. We're still on the training. I was lucky enough not to get any damage on the past fight, so we jumped immediately back into training. And my manager, we're looking for a fight within within the first quarter of next year, and whether that's another LFA fight or a short notice UFC fight, we're staying on top of it to be ready for whatever maybe. So we're expecting 50-50 right now, either LFA or UFC.
It would be a great step up. UFC is a very big step up in the career of every fighter, so it's really, there is no stronger promotion than that. That's the elite level of MMA fighting.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to add something, maybe to greet someone? Is there something maybe we missed to say?
I would like to just say that how grateful I am about having the team that I do. It was not an easy year for people to be ready for fights. Gyms being shut down and promotions even were shut down. We didn't know when the LFA or the UFC or any other promotion, really, we didn't know if they were going to put fights anytime soon. So I can see why it would have been really easy to take a break. I can see why it would have been really easy to be like, okay, well, let me just take it easy right now, just lounge around, whatever. But I'm really grateful that my team was able to we were able to support each other and to stay on top of what we love, of what we were passionate, just stay on top of training, stay on top of running. And I think that strength was what led to this victory. We did not take a break when the whole world kind of did, whether they were scared or whether they were, I don't know, inconvenienced. I know it was very difficult for some people. I'd just like to say that I'm very grateful for the team that I have, for holding me accountable for the achievements that I want to get. And I'm happy that I'm able to do the same for them. At the very least, I hope I am.
Thank you so much for the interview, and I will put the video to creation tomorrow morning your time. You can expect it live on my channel.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day, Victor.
Have a good one. Thank you.